A dog runs straight towards a police officer, its tail wagging frantically. But when the officer bends down to help, something unexpected happens. Moments later, the entire street is shut down by the police. What could this dog possibly have done to cause such chaos? Keep watching, because you won't believe what happens next. The bustling city streets were alive with activity as dawn painted the horizon with hues of orange and pink. The rhythmic hum of cars and the chatter of pedestrians created a symphony of urban life. Amid this ordinary morning, a small brown dog darted through the crowd, its paws pounding against the concrete with urgency. Its tail wagged in desperate determination, and its wide, pleading eyes seemed to search for someone, anyone, who could understand its silent cry for help. Officer Karen Mitchell, a seasoned patrol officer known for her sharp instincts and compassionate heart, was stationed at the corner of Maple Avenue and 3rd Street. She sipped her coffee, her eyes scanning the street for anything unusual, when the dog suddenly appeared. It bolted straight towards her, barking frantically, its small frame trembling with what seemed like fear and urgency. Karen instinctively knelt down, extending a hand in a gesture of comfort. "Hey there, little guy." "What's wrong?" she said softly, her voice cutting through the noise around her. But instead of calming down, the dog tugged at her pant leg with its teeth, as if urging her to follow. Intrigued, Karen stood up, her curiosity piqued. She exchanged glances with a few onlookers who had stopped to watch, their faces a mix of confusion and amusement. The dog barked again, more insistent this time, before running a few steps ahead and looking back at her. Karen's police training had taught her to trust her gut, and something about this dog's behavior told her that this was no ordinary situation. She decided to follow, her hand instinctively resting on the holster at her hip. As she signaled to her partner in the nearby patrol car to keep an eye on the street, she followed the dog through an alleyway, the noise of the city fading behind her. The alley led to an abandoned construction site, its skeletal framework casting eerie shadows in the morning light. The dog stopped at a rusted gate, barking loudly and scratching at the ground. Karen's eyes narrowed as she noticed something unusual, a faint trail of blood leading into the site. What was the dog trying to show her? She reached for her radio, her voice steady but urgent as she called for backup. This was just the beginning of a day that would change everything. Karen stepped cautiously through the rusted gate, the dog trotting ahead with a determined energy. The faint trail of blood weaved through the uneven ground of the construction site, broken up by patches of overgrown weeds and debris. She scanned the area, her senses heightened, noting every creak of loose metal and distant hum of the city. The dog paused, turning to look at her, its eyes a mixture of desperation and trust. The site was eerily quiet, the skeletal beams of the half-finished building looming overhead like giant sentinels. Karen felt a chill despite the warmth of the morning sun. The dog barked again, this time more sharply, and dashed toward a pile of wooden planks stacked haphazardly against a concrete wall. As Karen approached, she noticed a small hand protruding from beneath the planks, barely visible amidst the shadows. Her breath caught, and adrenaline surged through her veins. "Hello, can you hear me?" she called, crouching down to examine the scene more closely. The hand moved slightly, a weak sign of life that spurred Karen into action. She immediately reached for her radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer Mitchell. I need immediate backup and medical assistance at the abandoned construction site off Maple Avenue. Possible injured party under debris." "Over." The voice crackling back through her radio confirmed that help was on the way, but Karen knew time was critical. She turned her attention back to the trapped figure, carefully removing the lighter pieces of wood while ensuring she didn't cause further harm. The dog stood nearby, its barking replaced by a low whimper as it paced nervously. As Karen cleared away more debris, she uncovered a young boy, no older than 8, his face pale and streaked with dirt. His eyes fluttered open, locking onto hers with a mixture of fear and relief. "It's okay, sweetheart," Karen said, her voice calm but firm. "You're safe now. What's your name?" "Leo," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Leo, I'm Officer Karen," she said, brushing some dirt off his face. "You're going to be okay. I promise. Can you tell me what happened?" Leo's lips trembled, and tears welled in his eyes. "The bad men? They were chasing me," he stammered. "I hid here, but the wood fell." Karen's heart sank as the pieces began to fall into place. Whoever those bad men were, They had left a child to fend for himself in a dangerous construction site. "You're very brave, Leo," she said, offering him a reassuring smile. "Do you know where your parents are?" Leo shook his head, his tears spilling over. "I don't know. I ran away when they came for me." Karen gently squeezed his hand. "It's okay, you're safe now. We're going to figure this out together." The distant sound of sirens grew louder, signaling that backup and medical assistance were nearing. Karen waved to guide them in as they arrived, quickly briefing her colleagues on the situation. Paramedics rushed to Leo's side, carefully lifting him onto a stretcher. The dog, who had been sitting quietly, suddenly barked again, drawing Karen's attention to a nearby pile of rubble. Karen's instincts told her to investigate further. "Stay with him," she instructed one of the paramedics before walking toward the direction the dog was pointing out, with its anxious barks. Pushing aside a sheet of corrugated metal, Karen uncovered a backpack. Inside, she found a few essential items: a water bottle, some snacks, and a small notebook. Flipping through its pages, she discovered drawings of a family, a man, a woman, and a boy who looked remarkably like Leo. The crude but heartfelt sketches spoke volumes about the boy's world. On the final page, scrawled in shaky handwriting, was a phone number. Karen immediately dialed the number on her phone. After a few rings, a woman's voice answered, fraught with worry. "Hello? Hi, Ma'am. This is Officer Karen Mitchell of the City Police Department. I believe we've found your son, Leo. He's safe, but he's had quite an ordeal." The woman on the other end let out a sob of relief. "Oh, thank God. Is he okay? Where is he? Please, tell me where I can find him." Karen quickly relayed the location and assured the woman that her son was in good hands. "We're taking him to City General Hospital to make sure he's all right. You can meet us there." As Karen hung up, she felt a surge of satisfaction. The pieces were starting to come together, but something about Leo's mention of bad men nagged at her. Who were they? And why were they chasing a child? Karen looked down at the dog, who had been watching her intently the entire time. Good work, buddy," she said, scratching its head. "But I think our work here isn't done." The dog wagged its tail, almost as if it understood. As the ambulance pulled away with Leo safely inside, Karen stood by her patrol car, the weight of the morning's events settling heavily on her shoulders. The dog sat loyally at her feet, its alert gaze fixed on her, as if it knew the story was far from over. Something about Leo's account lingered in her mind, raising more questions than answers. She pulled out her notepad and jotted down what little information she had. Leo's description of bad men, the abandoned construction site, and the fact that the boy had been carrying essential supplies as if prepared for a journey. It was clear that Leo had been running from something or someone, but who were these men, and why were they after him? Karen decided to return to the site to investigate further. The dog, sensing her intent, trotted ahead, as if leading the way. The construction site felt even more ominous now, with its shadows stretching long and dark under the midday sun. Karen's hand instinctively brushed against her holstered weapon as she walked, her senses heightened. She began her search methodically, moving from one corner of the site to another. The dog's behavior became more animated as it sniffed the ground, occasionally barking at areas that seemed unremarkable at first glance. Karen paid close attention, knowing that the animal had already proven its instincts were sharp. Near a pile of discarded bricks, she found a torn piece of fabric snagged on a rusty nail. It was dark and coarse, like the material of a work jacket. Karen bagged it for evidence, her mind racing with possibilities. Just as she stood to move on, her radio crackled to life. "Mitchell, this is dispatch. The boy's mother has arrived at City General Hospital. She's requesting an update on his condition." Karen pressed the button on her radio. "Copy that. I'll head over shortly. Can you confirm if any officers are securing the hospital?" Affirmative. Officer Grant is stationed there. Relieved that Leo and his mother were in safe hands, Karen turned her attention back to the site. She didn't want to leave until she was sure she hadn't missed anything. The dog, now sniffing near a stack of unused wooden planks, let out a sharp bark and began pawing at the ground. "What is it, boy?" Karen murmured as she crouched beside him. Her hand brushed away the dirt and debris, revealing something metallic buried beneath the surface. She pulled out a small battered key with a number etched into its side, 312. Karen frowned, her mind working quickly. The key didn't belong to any equipment she recognized from the construction site. It looked like it could be for a storage unit or a lockbox. She bagged the key alongside the fabric scrap, intending to follow up on it later. The dog barked again, this time facing the entrance of the site. Karen's heart jumped as she turned to see a figure standing in the distance. A man dressed in dark clothes was watching her intently. His stance was casual, but there was something about his presence that put her on edge. "Can I help you?" Karen called out, her hand resting on her belt. The man didn't respond. Instead, he turned and walked away, disappearing behind a row of parked cars. Karen debated whether to follow him, but without knowing his intentions, she decided it was best to stay focused on her current task. She made a mental note of his description: medium height, dark jacket, baseball cap pulled low over his face. Back at her patrol car, Karen reviewed the evidence she'd collected. The key and fabric scrap were puzzling, but it was the man's sudden appearance that unsettled her the most. Was he connected to the bad men Leo had mentioned, or was it just a coincidence? She looked down at the dog, Hudson, who seemed equally uneasy. "You saw him too, didn't you?" she said, scratching its head. "Don't worry, we'll figure this out." Karen decided to head to the hospital. As she drove, her mind churned through the possibilities. Leo's story hinted at something far more sinister than a simple accident or misunderstanding. If the men who had been chasing him were still nearby, Leo and his mother could be in danger. At City General, the scene was calmer, but still tense. Karen entered the waiting room and immediately spotted Leo's mother, a petite woman with dark hair tied in a messy bun. She was pacing nervously, her eyes darting toward the door every time it opened. "Mrs. Evans?" Karen asked, approaching her. The woman turned, relief flooding her expression. "Yes, I'm Sarah Evans. Is Leo okay? Is he safe?" "He's stable and being checked by the doctors," Karen assured her. "He's very brave. I just need to ask you a few questions, if that's all right." Sarah nodded, her hands trembling. "Of course. Anything to help." Karen led her to a quieter corner of the room. "Can you tell me if Leo mentioned anything about the men who were chasing him? Did he describe them or say why they were after him?" Sarah hesitated, her eyes filling with tears. I think they're connected to my ex-husband," she admitted. "He's been in trouble with some dangerous people, and I thought we were safe after we left him. But maybe they found us." Karen's stomach tightened. This was bigger than she had anticipated. "Mrs. Evans, I need you to stay here and remain calm. We'll do everything we can to protect you and Leo." Karen stepped away, her mind racing. She glanced at the dog, who had settled near Leo's room. "Stay closer, buddy," she muttered. "We're going to need all the help we can get." Karen stepped outside the hospital to clear her head. The weight of Sarah's admission about her ex-husband's involvement with dangerous people added a new layer of urgency to the case. She leaned against her patrol car, running through the facts when her phone buzzed with a call from dispatch. "Mitchell Key, we've got something for you," the voice crackled through the line. "The key you found at the site, preliminary checks show it belongs to a storage facility downtown. The number 312 matches a unit in Bayview Storage. The facility owner confirmed the unit is under a fake name but was paid for in cash 6 months ago." Karen straightened, her heart racing. "Thanks. Dispatch. Can you send backup to meet me there? This might be connected to the case." "Copy that. Officers will meet you at the location." As Karen hung up, the dog barked sharply from inside the hospital, drawing her attention. She hurried back inside to find the dog pacing outside Leo's room, ears alert and body tense. The boy's face was pale, and he seemed anxious as he whispered to his mother. "What's wrong, Leo?" Karen asked gently, crouching down to his eye level. Leo hesitated, glancing at his mother, who gave him a nod of encouragement. "I saw someone," he finally admitted. "A man in a dark jacket and hat. He was watching me through the window." Karen's blood ran cold. "Are you sure, Leo?" The boy nodded vigorously. "He was the same man from before, the one who tried to catch me in the forest." Karen immediately stepped out into the hallway and grabbed her radio. "This is Mitchell. We need additional officers at City General now. A suspect matching Leo's description of the pursuers has been spotted near the hospital." She turned to the security guard at the entrance. "Lock down the hospital. No one gets in or out until we clear the area." Karen's mind raced as she returned to Leo's room. If the men were bold enough to follow Leo to the hospital, they wouldn't stop until they got what they wanted. But what was it, and why would they target a child? A short while later, Karen arrived at Bayview Storage with 2 patrol cars in tow. The storage facility was eerily quiet, its rows of units casting long shadows under the flickering fluorescent lights. The dog had insisted on coming along, refusing to leave Karen's side. She wasn't sure why, but she trusted its instincts. The facility manager, a middle-aged man with a nervous disposition, unlocked Unit 3 and 12 with trembling hands. "I don't want any trouble," he muttered, stepping back quickly. Karen drew her flashlight and gun, signaling for the other officers to follow her lead. She pushed the door open cautiously, her beam slicing through the darkness. The sight inside made her stomach drop. The unit was filled with surveillance equipment, monitors displaying live feeds of various locations, including the hospital, the construction site, and what appeared to be Sarah's home. Her corkboard on the wall was covered in photos of Sarah, Leo, and even Karen herself, taken from a distance. The meticulous planning evident in the setup was chilling. "What the hell is this?" one of the officers muttered, scanning the room. Karen stepped closer to the monitors, her eyes narrowing as she spotted a live feed of the hospital's parking lot. The camera zoomed in on a black SUV idling near the entrance. "Dispatch, this is Mitchell," Karen barked into her radio. "We've got eyes on a black SUV near City General. It could be our suspects. Requesting immediate interception." The dog barked suddenly, its nose pressed to a duffel bag in the corner. Karen unzipped it cautiously, revealing bundles of cash, fake passports, and a handgun. The implications were clear. This wasn't just a random group of thugs. It was an organized operation, and Sarah and Leo were caught in the middle. Karen's thoughts were interrupted by the facility manager's panicked voice. "Someone's here," he shouted, pointing to the entrance. Karen spun around just in time to see the man from the construction site, the one who had been watching her earlier, sprinting away from the facility. "Stop! Police!" she yelled, taking off after him. The chase was chaotic, weaving through the rows of storage units. The dog bolted ahead, its powerful strides closing the gap between Karen and the suspect. Just as the man reached the fence, the dog lunged, grabbing hold of his sleeve and dragging him to the ground. Karen cuffed the man quickly, her breath coming in gasps. "Who are you working for?" she demanded, but the man stayed silent, his expression blank. The officers hauled the man to his feet and led him to a patrol car. Karen stood there for a moment, her hands on her hips, trying to piece everything together. Whoever this group was, they weren't just after Leo, they were orchestrating something much bigger. Karen returned to the hospital with the captured suspect, her mind racing with unanswered questions. The live surveillance feeds from the storage unit confirmed what she had feared. This group had been monitoring Leo and Sarah for weeks, if not months. But why? What did they want with a child and his mother? As she entered the hospital, the tension was palpable. Officers stood guard at every entrance, and staff moved about in hushed tones. Sarah sat beside Leo's hospital bed, clutching his hand tightly. Her face was pale, and her eyes darted to Karen the moment she walked in. "Did you catch them?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. Karen nodded, pulling up a chair beside her. "We got one of them. He was at a storage facility full of evidence, live feeds, cash, weapons. They've been watching you, your home, and even the hospital." Sarah's breath hitched. "Watching us? For how long?" Karen hesitated. "We don't know yet, but it's clear they've been planning something for weeks. The equipment we found is sophisticated. This isn't just a small-time operation. They're organized and dangerous." Leo, who had been quiet, looked up at Karen with wide eyes. "Will they come back?" Karen crouched to his level, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Leo, we're doing everything we can to keep you and your mom safe. I promise, we won't let anything happen to you." The dog, who had been sitting protectively by Leo's bed, let out a low whine and nuzzled against him. The gesture seemed to calm the boy, who wrapped his arms around the animal. Meanwhile, the suspect was being interrogated in a secure room downstairs. Officer Ramirez, a seasoned interrogator, leaned across the table, his voice low and deliberate. "You've got one chance to talk. Who are you working for? And why are you targeting this family?" The man stared back silently, his face betraying no emotion. Ramirez slammed a file onto the table, a collection of photos from the storage unit, showing Sarah and Leo. "We already know you've been following them. The evidence speaks for itself. Talk now, or this gets a lot worse for you." The suspect's lips twitched, but he remained silent. Ramirez sighed, leaning back in his chair. Fine. Stay quiet. We've got your fingerprints and your face on camera, and a mountain of evidence linking you to this operation. You'll go down for this, whether you talk or not. Upstairs, Karen's phone buzzed with a message from Ramirez. Suspect isn't talking. Evidence points to a larger network. Need more time. Karen's jaw tightened as she read the message. She turned to Sarah. We're hitting roadblocks, but we'll get to the bottom of this. In the meantime, I want you and Leo moved to a safe house. It's too dangerous for you to stay here. Sarah hesitated, glancing at her son. Leo just got out of surgery. He's too weak to move right now. Karen nodded thoughtfully. Then we'll bring the safe house to you. I'll assign officers to stay with you here 24/7, and we'll secure this entire floor. As night fell, the hospital quieted, but Karen's unease grew. The dog, ever alert, paced near the door, growling softly at every sound. Karen couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. Whoever these people were, they wouldn't stop until they got what they wanted. Karen's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call from her captain. Mitchell, we've got intel on the group you're dealing with. They're part of a smuggling ring known for using families as leverage to move their goods. We think they were after Sarah because of her late husband. Karen's grip on the phone tightened. What about him? He was involved with them. He tried to get out, but they don't let people leave easily. When he died, they likely shifted their focus to Sarah, thinking she might have something they want. Karen ended the call and turned to Sarah. Sarah, did your husband ever mention anything about smuggling? Maybe something he kept hidden? Sarah's face turned pale. I don't know. He kept a lot from me, but there was a safe in our old house. He never let me near it. Karen's mind raced. Do you know if the safe is still there? Sarah shook her head. We sold the house after he passed, but it's possible. Karen stood, determination hardening her features. We need to find that safe. It might hold the answers we're looking for. Karen wasted no time. She sent a team to investigate the house Sarah had sold after her husband's death. If the safe was still there, it might hold crucial evidence to understand why this smuggling ring was targeting Sarah and Leo. But as she coordinated with her team, new complications arose. At the hospital, tension was mounting. The officers stationed on the floor reported an uptick in suspicious activity around the premises. Unmarked vehicles were spotted idling near the hospital's entrance, and a man had been caught loitering in the emergency wing, feigning illness. Karen's instincts told her this wasn't a coincidence. Stay sharp, Karen instructed her team. If they're testing our defenses, they might be planning something bigger. The dog, now an inseparable part of Leo's recovery, seemed to sense the growing danger. It barked at shadows in the hallway and remained glued to Leo's side, refusing to rest. Sarah, trying to stay strong for her son, was growing visibly anxious. Karen, she said, her voice shaking slightly, what if they come for us here? The hospital isn't a fortress. Karen placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We're not going to let that happen. I've doubled the security detail, and we're monitoring all entrances. Trust me, you and Leo are safe. But even as she said the words, Karen couldn't ignore the nagging doubt in the back of her mind. This group had proven to be resourceful and determined. If they wanted something badly enough, they wouldn't stop until they got it. Meanwhile, the team at the old house had hit a roadblock. The new owners of the property were uncooperative, refusing to allow officers inside without a warrant. Karen had anticipated this possibility and was already working on obtaining the necessary paperwork. But every minute wasted felt like a lifetime. Back at the precinct, Ramirez continued his interrogation of the suspect. After hours of silence, a single sentence slipped from the man's lips. You don't know what you're dealing with. Ramirez leaned forward, his expression unreadable. Enlighten me. The suspect smirked but said nothing more. Frustrated, Ramirez relayed the cryptic statement to Karen, who was already piecing together a larger puzzle. That evening, Karen gathered Sarah and Leo in the hospital room to discuss what they were up against. Sarah, Karen began, we believe this group is connected to your late husband's past. We don't have all the details yet, but we think he may have been involved in something he tried to escape from. Sarah looked stunned. He never told me. He always said he was working late for us, for our future. Karen nodded. That's likely why he kept it hidden. But his decision to leave them made him a target, And now they're looking at you as the next link. What do they want? Sarah asked, her voice breaking. We're not entirely sure yet, Karen admitted. It could be information, money, or something your husband had. But until we find out, we need to keep you both safe. As they spoke, Leo sat quietly on the bed, stroking the dog's fur. He looked up at Karen with wide eyes. Is this because of my dad? Karen crouched beside him, her expression softening. Leo, sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, but they always want what's best for their families. Your dad loved you and your mom very much. Leo nodded, though the fear in his eyes lingered. In the middle of the night, the hospital's security alarms blared. Karen jolted awake from the chair she had been dozing in. She grabbed her weapon and ran into the hallway, where officers were scrambling to secure the area. What's happening? Karen demanded. One of the officers pointed toward the east wing. Someone tried to breach the loading dock. They cut through the fence. Karen's heart pounded. Did they get inside? No, but they left this. The officer handed Karen a small piece of paper with a hastily scrawled message. We know where the boy is. This isn't over. Karen clenched her fists. They were taunting her, testing her resolve. She immediately called Ramirez, updating him on the situation. We need to move faster. If they're bold enough to come this close, they won't stop here. The pressure mounted as Karen's team finally obtained the warrant to search the old house. The officers moved swiftly, entering the property with precision. In the basement, hidden behind a false wall, they found the safe. It was intact, but its combination was unknown. Karen, still at the hospital, received the update over the phone. Get a locksmith on site. Whatever's in that safe could be the key to stopping this. As she ended the call, she turned to Sarah. We're close to answers, but I need you to stay strong. Leo needs you, and so do we. Sarah nodded, her determination hardening. I'll do whatever it takes to protect my son. The next morning, the tension in the hospital was palpable. Karen's team worked tirelessly to analyze the note left by the intruders, while officers patrolled every hallway. Sarah sat by Leo's bed, holding his hand tightly, her exhaustion showing in the dark circles under her eyes. Despite Karen's reassurances, the fear of another attack weighed heavily on her. I can't just sit here, Karen, Sarah said, her voice trembling but resolute. There has to be something I can do to help. Karen looked at her sympathetically. Sarah, you've already been through so much. Right now, the best thing you can do is stay here and focus on Leo. But what about the safe? What if there's something in there that can explain all of this? Sarah pressed. I need to know what my husband was hiding. Karen hesitated, torn between wanting to protect Sarah and acknowledging her right to the truth. We're working on it. As soon as we have the safe open, I promise you'll know what's inside. Meanwhile, Leo's bond with the dog, whom he had named Shadow, continued to grow. Shadow refused to leave Leo's side, sensing the boy's unease. Leo whispered to the dog as he stroked its fur, his small voice filled with curiosity and worry. Do you think Dad did something bad, Shadow? Leo asked, his eyes searching the dog's face as if it could answer. I don't think he meant to hurt anyone. Shadow let out a soft whine, resting its head on Leo's lap. The quiet exchange didn't go unnoticed by Sarah, who watched her son with a mixture of heartbreak and determination. Hours later, Karen received a call from her team at the old house. We've got the safe open, one of the officers reported. You're not going to believe what we found. Karen's grip on the phone tightened. What is it? There's a ledger inside. It's a detailed account of payments, contacts, and transactions related to an international smuggling operation. Your hunch was right. Sarah's husband was involved, but it looks like he tried to back out. That's likely what got him killed. Karen's mind raced as she processed the information. This was a breakthrough, but it also raised more questions. Who else was involved, and how far would they go to silence anyone who knew about the operation? Bring the ledger to the precinct immediately, Karen instructed. We'll need to cross-reference it with our existing intel. Back at the hospital, Karen sat down with Sarah to break the news. Sarah, we've opened the safe. Inside, we found evidence linking your husband to an international smuggling ring. It looks like he tried to leave the operation, but they didn't let him go quietly. Sarah's face paled, and she gripped the armrests of her chair. He never told me. I thought he was working late to provide for us. Karen nodded. That's likely what he wanted you to believe. It's clear he cared about you and Leo deeply, but his decision to leave the operation put you both in danger. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she tried to reconcile the man she loved with the secrets he had kept. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice shaking. "We're using the information from the ledger to identify and track down everyone involved in the operation," Karen explained. "But it also means the people after you are more dangerous than we initially thought. They won't stop until they've tied up every loose end." The weight of Karen's words hung heavy in the air. Sarah looked over at Leo, who was playing quietly with Shadow on the hospital bed. "I just want my son to be safe," she said, her voice filled with determination. "Whatever it takes, I'll do it." Karen placed a reassuring hand on Sarah's shoulder. "You're not alone in this. We're going to protect you and Leo." "I promise." That evening, as the hospital quieted down, Sarah struggled with a mix of emotions: fear, betrayal, and a fierce resolve to protect her son. She called Karen into the room for a private conversation. "I need to know," Sarah began, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. "If something happens to me, what will happen to Leo?" Karen's expression softened. "Sarah, nothing's going to happen to you. We're doing everything we can to keep you both safe. But if it does," Sarah pressed, "I need to know he'll be okay." Karen hesitated before answering. "If it comes to that, Leo will be placed with someone who can care for him, someone you trust." Sarah nodded, though the thought clearly pained her. "Then I want you to promise me something. Promise me you'll make sure he knows how much I love him, no matter what." Karen's throat tightened, but she nodded. "You have my word." The conversation left Karen with a renewed sense of urgency. She knew they were racing against time, and every decision she made carried enormous weight. As she returned to her station outside Sarah and Leo's room, she silently vowed to see this through to the end. The calm of the hospital was shattered just before dawn. An unmarked van pulled into the visitors' parking lot, and the surveillance team flagged it immediately. The windows were heavily tinted, and the driver lingered, seemingly watching the entrance. Karen was alerted within moments and quickly reviewed the security footage. "They're probing us again," Karen muttered under her breath. "But they're getting bolder." She ordered officers to discreetly approach the van, but as they neared, the vehicle sped off, its tires screeching against the pavement. The timing was too suspicious to dismiss. Inside the hospital, Sarah woke to find Shadow growling softly at the door. Leo was still asleep, clutching the dog's fur like a lifeline. Karen entered the room moments later, her face tight with concern. "What's wrong?" Sarah asked immediately, her voice barely above a whisper. Karen hesitated. "We spotted a suspicious vehicle outside. They drove off before we could engage, but it's clear they're testing our defenses." Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. "They're coming for us, aren't they?" Karen nodded. "It's a possibility. That's why I'm moving you and Leo to a safer location." "Where?" Sarah asked, her voice tinged with panic. Karen glanced at Leo. "There's a safe house not far from here. It's secure and under constant surveillance. We'll move at first light." The decision to relocate was not without risk. Karen knew that moving Sarah and Leo would make them vulnerable, but staying at the hospital was no longer an option. She ordered her team to prepare for the transfer and set up a decoy vehicle to distract any would-be pursuers. As they prepared to leave, Karen noticed Sarah packing a small bag. Among the items were photos of her late husband, a locket Leo had made for her, and a journal. "These are all I have left of him," Sarah said quietly, her eyes glistening with tears. Karen didn't respond immediately, instead placing a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "We'll get through this. You and Leo will have a future, safe and free from all of this." The convoy departed just as the sun rose, bathing the streets in a golden glow. Karen's team executed the plan with precision. The decoy vehicle took off first, followed by the primary vehicle carrying Sarah, Leo, Shadow, and Karen herself. 2 unmarked cars trailed behind, ensuring no one followed them. At first, the journey was uneventful. Leo sat in the back seat with Shadow, who kept his head on the boy's lap. Sarah kept glancing nervously out the window, her hands twisting in her lap. "Are we almost there?" she asked Karen. Karen nodded. "Another 15 minutes. But as they turned onto a quiet stretch of road, Karen's phone buzzed with an urgent call from one of the trailing cars. "We've got a tail," the officer reported. "Black SUV, heavily tinted windows. They're keeping their distance, but it's them." Karen's heart sank. "Stay close. If they make a move, we'll handle it." The tension in the car was palpable. Karen quickly gave orders to the driver, instructing them to take a detour and head for a backup safe house. The convoy adjusted course, but the black SUV followed every turn. Suddenly, the SUV accelerated, pulling alongside the convoy's rear vehicle. Without warning, the SUV swerved, ramming the trailing car and forcing it off the road. The officer in the car radioed for backup, but the line went dead before they could provide their status. Karen grabbed her radio and called for immediate air support and additional units. "This is Detective Karen Matthews. We're under attack, requesting urgent backup at Route 47 near Pine Creek." Leo clung tightly to Shadow, his wide eyes filled with fear. "Mom, what's happening?" he asked, his voice trembling. "It's okay, sweetheart," Sarah said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Karen will keep us safe." Karen glanced back at them. "Stay down and hold on. We're going to get through this." The SUV pulled alongside the convoy again, its windows lowering just enough to reveal masked figures. One of them pointed a weapon at the lead vehicle, but before they could act, Karen's driver made a sharp turn, cutting through a narrow side street. The maneuver momentarily threw off the SUV, but Karen knew it wouldn't buy them much time. She quickly adjusted their route, heading for a public area where they could blend in and regroup. As they neared a crowded shopping plaza, Karen's reinforcements finally arrived. 2 patrol cars sped in from a side street, their sirens blaring. The sight of law enforcement caused the SUV to hesitate. The masked figures inside exchanged glances before abruptly turning down another street and disappearing into the distance. Karen exhaled deeply, her knuckles white from gripping the door handle. "That was too close," she muttered. They reached the safe house without further incident, but the close call left everyone shaken. Karen immediately debriefed her team, instructing them to tighten security and keep a watchful eye on the surrounding area. Sarah sat on the couch, holding Leo close as Shadow curled protectively at their feet. "Mom," Leo said quietly, "why do bad people want to hurt us?" Sarah kissed the top of his head, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know, sweetheart, but I promise you, we'll be okay." Karen, watching from the doorway, felt a surge of determination. She knew this wasn't over, but she was more resolved than ever to bring the smuggling ring to justice and ensure Sarah and Leo's safety. The safe house was an unassuming cabin, nestled deep in a wooded area, surrounded by dense trees that acted as natural barriers. Inside, the space was minimal but functional. 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, and a central living area equipped with a fireplace. Officers stood guard outside, patrolling the perimeter in shifts, while a surveillance team monitored the area from a hidden vantage point. Sarah and Leo sat together on the worn couch, Shadow resting at their feet. The dog's ears twitched occasionally, as if he too was on high alert. Karen entered the room with a steaming cup of coffee and handed it to Sarah. "I know it's not much, but it'll help you stay warm," Karen said with a faint smile. "How are you holding up?" Sarah accepted the coffee with trembling hands. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "For Leo, for myself, even for you. These people won't stop, will they?" Karen crouched beside her, meeting Sarah's gaze. "They're relentless, yes, but we're not going to let them win. We've got a lead on the ring's operations thanks to the ledger, and every step we take brings us closer to shutting them down for good." Later that evening, Karen sat at the small dining table, poring over the ledger they had recovered. Each page was filled with coded entries, aliases, and cryptic symbols. It was clear that Sarah's late husband had been deeply embedded in the smuggling operation before attempting to break free. One name kept recurring: the broker. Karen tapped the page with her pen. "Who is the broker?" she muttered, half to herself. An officer stationed nearby stepped forward. "We've seen that alias before. It's tied to several cases of high-level smuggling across state lines. Always operates in the shadows, never directly involved in transactions. He's like a puppet master." Karen nodded thoughtfully. "If we can find him, we can dismantle this entire network. But we need to act quickly before they regroup." In the adjacent room, Sarah was tucking Leo into one of the narrow beds. The boy clung to her, his small face etched with worry. "Mom, are we going to stay here forever?" he asked, his voice trembling. "No, sweetheart," Sarah replied, smoothing his hair. "This is just until Karen and her team make sure it's safe for us to go home." "But what if they come here?" Leo pressed, his eyes wide with fear. "What if they hurt you or Shadow?" Sarah's heart broke at the question, but she forced herself to stay calm. They won't find us, Leo. Karen is very smart and there are a lot of people protecting us. Shadow, as if sensing the tension, nuzzled Leo's hand, earning a small smile from the boy. Shadow will protect us too, won't you? Leo asked, his voice softening. Shadow let out a quiet bark, wagging his tail. For a moment, the weight of fear lifted, replaced by a flicker of hope. As night fell, Karen gathered her team for a briefing in the safe house's cramped kitchen. We've identified potential locations tied to the broker, she began, pointing to a map spread out on the table. Our best lead is a warehouse in the industrial district. It's heavily secured, but if we can get in, we might find the information we need to track him down. One of the officers, a burly man named Jensen, raised a hand. What about Sarah and Leo? If we move on the warehouse, they could retaliate. Karen nodded. That's why we're leaving a full team here. No one gets in or out without authorization. Jensen hesitated. And what if the lead is a trap? It's a risk we have to take, Karen said firmly. But if we don't act, Sarah and Leo will never be safe. The next morning, Karen prepared to leave for the warehouse raid. Before departing, she pulled Sarah aside. I need you to stay strong, she said, her tone both serious and comforting. We're going to find the broker and put an end to this. Sarah nodded, though her eyes betrayed her fear. Be careful, Karen. You've done so much for us already. Karen smiled faintly. It's my job, and I'm not giving up until this is over. As Karen and her team left, the safe house fell into an uneasy quiet. Sarah tried to distract herself by tidying up and playing games with Leo, but the tension was palpable. Every rustle of leaves outside made her heart race, and Shadow's occasional growls only heightened her anxiety. That afternoon, an officer stationed outside knocked on the door. Ma'am, we've got movement in the woods, he said, his voice low. Sarah froze. What kind of movement? Unclear, could be animals, but we're not taking any chances. Stay inside and keep the doors locked. Sarah nodded, pulling Leo close. Come on, sweetheart. Let's go sit in the living room. But Mom, Leo started, but Sarah cut him off. No arguments, Leo, just stay with me. Shadow followed them, his posture tense and his ears perked. Sarah locked the door and peered through the window, her stomach churning with dread. The woods seemed still, but she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Back at the warehouse, Karen's team breached the entrance, weapons drawn. The interior was dimly lit and eerily quiet, with rows of crates stacked high against the walls. As they moved deeper inside, they found a small office. Inside was a computer, still running, and a stack of documents on the desk. Bingo, Karen whispered, signaling for a tech specialist to start downloading files. But as the files began transferring, an alarm suddenly blared and the warehouse lights flickered on. A voice crackled over a hidden speaker. Detective Matthews, you're a persistent one. Karen's heart sank as she recognized the voice. The broker. The echoing voice of the broker filled the warehouse, each word dripping with mockery. Karen motioned for her team to take defensive positions, her pulse quickening as she scanned the room for hidden cameras or speakers. You're bold, Detective Matthews, the voice continued, its tone shifting to something more sinister. But you should have stayed out of this. Now you've forced my hand. Karen grabbed her radio. Secure the exits. No one leaves this building without my orders. The team sprang into action, splitting into pairs to cover all possible escape routes. Meanwhile, the tech specialist frantically worked on finishing the file transfer from the computer. Back at the safe house, Sarah sat on the couch, clutching Leo tightly as Shadow barked at the door. The officer guarding the entrance appeared on edge, his hand resting on the holster of his sidearm. There's definitely movement out there, he said, his voice low but firm. I'm calling for reinforcements. Sarah nodded, her heart racing. Do you think they've found us? I don't know, the officer replied, but we're not taking any chances. As he radioed for backup, Sarah heard a faint rustling outside the window. She instinctively pulled Leo closer and whispered, Stay quiet, sweetheart. Shadow's barking grew louder, and Sarah noticed the dog's hackles rising. He stood protectively in front of them, growling low and deep. Whatever was out there wasn't a stray animal. At the warehouse, Karen's team found themselves in a tense standoff. The broker continued to taunt them through the speakers. You think you've won, don't you? But you're just pawns in a game far bigger than you realize. Karen clenched her jaw. Cut the theatrics. We've got your files, it's over. A low chuckle echoed through the space. Oh, detective, you've only just started to unravel the web. Did you really think I wouldn't have contingencies? Before Karen could respond, the overhead lights flickered and went out, plunging the warehouse into darkness. Her team activated their flashlights, the beams cutting through the oppressive gloom. Stay alert, Karen ordered, her voice steady despite the rising tension. They're trying to disorient us. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the warehouse as a stack of crates toppled over, scattering debris across the floor. Karen swung her flashlight toward the sound but saw nothing. Her instincts screamed that they were being hunted. Meanwhile, at the safe house, the tension reached a boiling point. A loud thud against the front door made Sarah jump. The officer moved to investigate, his weapon drawn. Stay back, he instructed Sarah, his voice tight with focus. The thudding grew louder, and then, with a deafening crack, the door burst open. 3 masked figures stormed in, their movements swift and calculated. Shadow lunged at the nearest intruder, his teeth bared, but the man shoved him away with a brutal kick. "Mom!" Leo screamed, clutching Sarah's arm. The officer fired a warning shot, shouting, "Drop your weapons and get down!" One of the intruders tackled the officer, and a struggle ensued. Sarah grabbed Leo and ducked behind the couch, her heart pounding. Shadow recovered quickly, leaping onto another intruder and knocking him to the ground. Back at the warehouse, Karen's team faced a similar ambush. Shadowy figures emerged from the darkness, their movements precise and coordinated. Karen fired her weapon, the sound echoing in the vast space. Her team engaged the attackers, a chaotic melee breaking out amidst the stacks of crates. "Hold the line!" Karen shouted, moving to cover the tech specialist still working on the file transfer. "How much longer?" 2 minutes, the specialist called back, his voice strained. Karen took a defensive position, firing at an approaching attacker. "We don't have 2 minutes," she muttered under her breath. At the safe house, the fight escalated. The officer managed to subdue one of the intruders, but the others pressed forward. Sarah, trembling with fear, spotted her cell phone on the coffee table. Summoning all her courage, she lunged for it, dialing Karen's number with shaky hands. The call went through just as another intruder grabbed her arm. "Karen, help us!" Sarah screamed into the phone before the device was knocked from her hand. Karen heard Sarah's cry for help over the chaos of the warehouse. Her blood ran cold. "Sarah? Sarah?" she shouted into her radio, but the line had gone dead. "Damn it," Karen barked, turning to the tech specialist. "Abort the transfer. We're leaving, now." The specialist hesitated but complied, shutting down the computer and securing the drive. Karen signaled her team to retreat, firing a final round at their attackers to cover their exit. At the safe house, Shadow fought valiantly, his growls and barks echoing through the small space. He managed to force one intruder out the door, but another grabbed Leo, dragging him toward the exit. "No!" Sarah screamed, lunging after them. She grabbed a heavy lamp from a side table and swung it with all her strength, striking the intruder and forcing him to release Leo. The sound of approaching sirens finally broke through the chaos. The remaining intruders retreated, disappearing into the woods as backup arrived. Karen and her team arrived moments later, the safe house now swarming with officers. Karen rushed inside, her heart pounding as she called out, "Sarah, Leo, we're here." Sarah's voice came from the living room, trembling but alive. She held Leo tightly, her face streaked with tears. Shadow limped over to Karen, his tail wagging weakly. Karen knelt to pet him, her relief palpable. "Good boy," she whispered. The aftermath of the attack on the safe house left the air heavy with tension. Officers swarmed the scene, securing the area and gathering evidence. Karen stood in the living room, her gaze darting between Sarah, Leo, and Shadow, whose limp was being tended to by an officer. "Are you okay?" Karen asked Sarah, her voice low but urgent. Sarah nodded shakily. "They came out of nowhere. If it weren't for Shadow," her voice cracked, and she pulled Leo closer. Karen knelt to Leo's level, her expression softening. "You were very brave, Leo. I'm proud of you." The boy clung to his mother, his small frame trembling. "I was so scared," he whispered. Karen placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You're safe now, I promise." Meanwhile, officers brought in one of the subdued intruders for questioning. Karen stepped outside to confront him, her heart burning with the need for answers. "Who sent you?" she demanded, her voice cutting through the noise of the scene. "Was it the broker?" The man, bloodied and defiant, smirked. "You think you've won, detective. You've only made yourself a bigger target." Karen's jaw tightened. "You'll tell me everything, or you'll spend the rest of your life in a cell." The man leaned closer, his voice low and chilling. "You have no idea what you're dealing with. This is bigger than you." Karen stormed back inside, frustration boiling over. She pulled aside her tech specialist, who had arrived from the warehouse with the stolen drive. "Do we have anything from the files?" she asked urgently. The specialist nodded, his expression grim. "We've uncovered some details about the broker's operation. It's extensive, accounts, contacts, even locations. But what?" Karen pressed. "The files are encrypted. It'll take time to decode everything." Karen sighed, running a hand through her hair. Time was a luxury they didn't have. Back inside, Sarah approached Karen, her face pale but determined. "What's our next move?" she asked. Karen hesitated, knowing the danger of involving Sarah further. "You and Leo need to be relocated. It's not safe here." Sarah shook her head. "We're not running again. This ends now." Karen admired Sarah's resolve but couldn't ignore the risks. "I can't let anything happen to you or Leo. You're my priority." Sarah stepped closer, her voice firm. "And what about the broker? He'll keep coming. For us. For others." "This has to stop," Karen sighed, torn between her duty to protect and the need to strike back. Finally, she nodded. "Okay, but we do this my way." The team convened at the precinct to strategize. The decrypted files revealed a potential lead, a warehouse outside the city, marked as a meeting point for the broker's associates. Karen studied the map, her mind racing. If we hit this location, we might find enough evidence to dismantle his operation. The room fell silent as the weight of the plan settled over them. Sarah spoke up, her voice steady. "We'll do whatever it takes." Karen met her gaze, appreciating her courage. "This is dangerous." "Are you sure?" Sarah nodded. "For Leo, for all the others who might be at risk." The operation was set for that night. Karen briefed her team, emphasizing the importance of precision and stealth. "This is our chance to bring him down," she said, her voice resolute. "Let's make it count." As they prepared, Karen pulled Sarah aside. "Stay close to me no matter what, do you understand?" Sarah nodded, her face set with determination. The convoy of vehicles moved through the darkness, the tension palpable. When they arrived at the warehouse, the team spread out, securing the perimeter. Karen led the group inside, her weapon drawn. The interior was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of oil and damp concrete. Crates were stacked haphazardly, and faint voices echoed from deeper within. Karen motioned for silence, signaling her team to advance. As they moved closer, the voices grew clearer. Karen recognized one immediately, the broker. She peered around a stack of crates, spotting him surrounded by armed guards. He was tall, with a commanding presence, his cold eyes scanning the room. Karen's heart pounded. This was their moment. She signaled her team, and they sprang into action. Flashbangs erupted, disorienting the guards. Chaos ensued as the team moved in, taking down the guards with practiced efficiency. The broker, however, remained calm. "Impressive, detective," he said, his voice cutting through the commotion. "But you're too late." Karen advanced, her weapon trained on him. "Hands where I can see them." The broker smirked, raising his hands slowly. "Do you really think this ends with me? There's always someone else." Karen's grip tightened. "We'll see about that." As officers secured the broker, Karen noticed a briefcase on the table. She opened it to find more encrypted files, each one a potential key to unraveling the network. "This is it," she said, her voice filled with hope. "We've got him." Back at the precinct, the broker was placed in custody and the files were handed over to the tech team. Karen turned to Sarah, who sat beside Leo, exhaustion and relief evident on her face. "It's over," Karen said softly. "You're safe." Sarah smiled faintly, tears welling in her eyes. "Thank you, Karen, for everything." Karen nodded, her heart swelling with a mix of pride and relief. "So you were the real hero today." The broker's arrest felt like a victory, but Karen couldn't shake the unease settling in her chest. Sitting at her desk, she reviewed the files recovered from the briefcase. Each document seemed to connect to another layer of his network, a sprawling web that reached far beyond what they'd anticipated. Her tech specialist approached, holding a tablet. "Detective, you'll want to see this," he said, his tone urgent. Karen leaned forward, her eyes scanning the screen. "What am I looking at?" "The encrypted files we've cracked. They include detailed plans for more operations, smuggling routes, financial transactions, and something labeled reclamation protocol. It looks like he anticipated getting caught." Karen's pulse quickened. "Reclamation protocol? What does it mean?" The tech specialist hesitated. "It's vague, but from what we've pieced together, it involves targeting anyone connected to this investigation. Witnesses, informants, even law enforcement." Karen's stomach dropped. She immediately thought of Sarah and Leo. Meanwhile, in the safe house, Sarah sat beside Leo as he slept on the couch, his small hand clutching Shadow's fur. The dog had refused to leave his side, his loyal gaze fixed on the door. Sarah stared out the window, her mind replaying the events of the past few days. The relief of the broker's arrest was fleeting, replaced by the nagging fear of what might come next. Her phone buzzed, breaking the silence. It was Karen. "Sarah," Karen said, her voice steady but urgent. "We've uncovered something. The broker's network might retaliate. I need you to stay where you are and lock the doors. I'm sending officers to reinforce the safe house." Sarah's grip on the phone tightened. "Retaliate? What do you mean?" "There's a plan in motion. I'm on my way," Karen said before the line went dead. Karen raced through the city, the siren of her unmarked car cutting through the night. Her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. The encrypted files, the broker's chilling words, and the possibility that this wasn't over. She called the officers stationed near the safe house, but there was no answer. When she arrived, the scene was eerily quiet. The front porch light flickered, casting long shadows across the yard. Karen drew her weapon and approached cautiously. She knocked on the door, her heart pounding. "Sarah, it's Karen." The door creaked open and Sarah stood there, her face pale but determined. "Thank God you're here." Karen stepped inside, scanning the room. "Where's Leo?" "Upstairs with Shadow." "He's scared." Karen nodded, her instincts on high alert. "We need to leave. Now." As they gathered their things, Shadow began barking furiously. Karen turned toward the staircase, her weapon raised. The dog's barking was followed by a loud crash as the back door burst open. Several masked figures stormed in, their movements swift and coordinated. "Get down!" Karen shouted, positioning herself between the intruders and Sarah. A firefight erupted, the sound of gunfire echoing through the house. Shadow lunged at one of the intruders, his teeth sinking into the man's arm. Sarah grabbed Leo and shielded him behind the couch, her body trembling with fear. Karen moved with precision, taking down one intruder after another. Her focus was unyielding, driven by the need to protect Sarah and Leo. But the attackers were relentless, their numbers overwhelming. Amid the chaos, one of the intruders grabbed Sarah, dragging her toward the door. Leo screamed, tears streaming down his face as he clung to Shadow. "Mommy!" he cried, his voice piercing the air. Karen acted without hesitation, firing a precise shot that incapacitated the man. Sarah stumbled back, falling into Karen's arms. "We're not letting them take you," Karen said firmly. The remaining attackers retreated, realizing they were outmatched. The sound of approaching sirens signaled reinforcements, and the intruders fled into the night. When the house fell silent, Karen lowered her weapon, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Officers flooded the scene, securing the area and tending to the wounded. Shadow, despite his injuries, stood guard beside Leo, his loyalty unwavering. Karen knelt in front of Sarah and Leo, her voice gentle. "Are you okay?" Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. "You saved us." Again, Karen placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "This isn't over, but we'll keep fighting. You're not alone." Later, at the precinct, Karen watched as Sarah and Leo were escorted to a new safe house, this time with maximum security. She couldn't shake the weight of what had happened, the knowledge that the broker's reach was still vast. Her tech specialist approached, holding another decrypted file. "Detective, there's more. We've identified key players in the broker's network. If we act fast, we can take them down." Karen's jaw tightened. "Then let's finish this." Karen stood in the operations room, the dim light from the monitors casting shadows on her determined face. Maps and photos of the broker's network covered the walls, red lines connecting names, places, and operations. The recent attack on Sarah and Leo had ignited a fire within her. This wasn't just a mission, it was personal. Her tech specialist approached, holding a tablet. "Detective, we've located the nerve center of the broker's operation. It's a compound in the outskirts. He's been using it to orchestrate his network and hide sensitive data." Karen studied the map. "How secure is it?" "Extremely," he admitted. "But we've got one advantage. They don't know we're coming. If we move fast, we can catch them off guard." Karen nodded, her resolve hardening. "Get the team ready. This ends tonight." As the tactical team assembled, Karen briefed them. "This compound is the heart of the broker's operation. Inside, we'll find the servers containing his financial records, client lists, and evidence of his crimes. But make no mistake, this will be dangerous. He knows we're closing in." The room fell silent as the weight of her words sank in. Finally, one of the officers spoke. "We've got your back, Detective." Karen offered a tight smile. "Thank you, let's bring him down." Under the cover of darkness, the convoy of vehicles moved toward the compound. The tension was palpable as the team prepared for the raid. Karen's mind raced, her thoughts filled with Sarah and Leo. This was her chance to ensure their safety and dismantle the network that had terrorized them. The compound came into view, its high fences topped with barbed wire. Security cameras dotted the perimeter, and armed guards patrolled the grounds. Karen signaled for the team to stop. "We move in 3 teams, she instructed. "Team Alpha will breach the main gate. Team Bravo secures the perimeter. Team Charlie comes with me to the servers." With a collective nod, the team moved into position. The operation began with a deafening explosion as Team Alpha breached the main gate. Chaos erupted as guards scrambled to respond. Karen led Team Charlie through a side entrance, her weapon drawn. The corridors were dimly lit, the air thick with tension. "Stay focused," Karen urged, her voice low but firm. "We're getting those servers." The sound of gunfire echoed through the compound as the teams engaged the guards. Karen's group advanced methodically, taking down threats with precision. They reached the server room, a fortified space guarded by a steel door. "Blow it," Karen ordered. The demolition expert set the charges, and moments later, the door exploded inward. The team stormed the room, securing the area as Karen approached the servers. "Get me everything," she told the tech specialist. He plugged in a portable drive, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "I'm pulling all the data now, give me 2 minutes." As the team held their position, Karen's radio crackled. "Detective, we've got a problem," came the voice of Team Bravo's leader. "Reinforcements are arriving, we're outnumbered." Karen's heart pounded. "Hold your position as long as you can, we're almost done here." The tech specialist turned to her, his expression grim. "Transfer complete, but they've triggered a wipe. We need to secure the physical servers to recover anything else." Karen nodded. "Do it quickly." The compound shook as explosions rocked the building. Smoke filled the air, and the sound of reinforcements closing in grew louder. Karen grabbed the server components and signaled to her team. "Time to move." They fought their way back through the corridors, the intensity of the battle escalating. Karen's focus never wavered as she led her team toward the extraction point. Outside, Team Alpha and Bravo were locked in a fierce firefight with the broker's men. Karen spotted him in the chaos, barking orders from behind a group of guards. Her eyes narrowed. "Cover me," she shouted, breaking from her team. Karen moved through the chaos with precision, taking down guards as she closed the distance to the broker. He spotted her too late, his confident demeanor replaced by panic. "Game over," Karen said, her weapon trained on him. The broker raised his hands, a smirk tugging at his lips. "You think this changes anything? My network will rebuild. You've won nothing." Karen's jaw tightened. "We'll see about that." She cuffed him and led him to the extraction point, her grip firm despite his attempts to intimidate her. The sight of their leader in custody demoralized the remaining guards, and the tide of the battle shifted in the team's favor. As the convoy sped away from the compound, Karen sat beside the broker, her eyes locked on him. "You've lost," she said, her voice steady. "And when we're done with you, there won't be anything left of your operation." The broker chuckled. "You're relentless, Detective. I'll give you that, but you'll see. This world doesn't reward heroes. Karen's gaze didn't waver. We'll see who's rewarded when this is over. Back at the precinct, the team began analyzing the data recovered from the servers. Karen stood in the observation room, watching as the broker was interrogated. Despite his bravado, she knew the evidence they'd gathered would seal his fate. A knock at the door drew her attention. It was Sarah, holding Leo's hand. "We just wanted to say thank you," Sarah said softly. Karen smiled, kneeling to meet Leo's eyes. "You're a brave kid," she said. "Don't ever forget that." Leo smiled shyly, and Sarah placed a hand on Karen's shoulder. "Because of you, we have a future." Karen nodded, her heart swelling with a mix of relief and pride. That's all that matters. The precinct buzzed with activity as Karen stepped out of the observation room. The weight of the day's events lingered, but a quiet sense of triumph settled in her chest. The broker was in custody, his operation dismantled, and the data retrieved from the servers would ensure his network could never rebuild. Karen joined her team in the operations room, where the tech specialist was presenting his findings. "We've mapped out every branch of the broker's network," he said. "With this data, we can coordinate with international agencies to bring down his collaborators." Karen nodded, her determination renewed. "Good work. Let's make sure no one slips through the cracks." Later that evening, Karen returned to her office, the adrenaline of the day giving way to exhaustion. She placed a framed photo of her and her team on the desk, a reminder of the camaraderie and dedication that had brought them this far. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. It was Sarah and Leo, accompanied by Shadow, who wagged his tail enthusiastically. Karen smiled, gesturing for them to come in. "I wasn't expecting visitors," she said, her tone light. "We wanted to see you before heading to the safe house," Sarah explained, "and to thank you again for everything." Karen crouched to Leo's level. "How are you holding up, champ?" Leo grinned, his eyes lighting up. "Shadow's been keeping me company. He's my best friend." Karen ruffled the dog's fur. "He's a good one. You're lucky to have each other." As they talked, Sarah's expression grew more serious. "Karen, I can't thank you enough for what you've done, for me, for Leo. You put yourself in danger to protect us. I don't know how to repay that." Karen shook her head. "You don't owe me anything. I just did my job." "But it's more than that," Sarah insisted. "You gave us hope when we thought there was none. That's something I'll never forget." The next morning, the news of the broker's arrest spread quickly, with headlines praising the police operation. Karen's phone buzzed non-stop with messages of congratulations from colleagues and community members. Despite the recognition, Karen remained focused on the work ahead. The fight against crime was far from over. Her supervisor called her into his office, a rare smile on his face. "Karen, you've done exemplary work. The department is proud of what you've accomplished." Karen nodded, her humility evident. "Thank you, sir, but this was a team effort. And that's why we need leaders like you," he replied. "Keep up the good work." Meanwhile, at the safe house, Sarah and Leo began rebuilding their lives. The fear that had once dominated their days was slowly replaced by a sense of safety and optimism. Leo returned to school, his confidence bolstered by the support of his mother and Shadow. Sarah found solace in connecting with other survivors, her story inspiring others to stand up against injustice. Karen visited them regularly, her bond with the family growing stronger. Each visit reinforced her commitment to protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. She saw in Sarah and Leo a resilience that reminded her why she had joined the force in the first place. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the city, Karen stood on the balcony of her apartment, reflecting on the journey. The world wasn't perfect, and there were still battles to fight, but she felt a deep sense of fulfillment in knowing she had made a difference. Her phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. "Leo wants you to come over for dinner. He says Shadow misses you." Karen smiled, typing her reply, "I wouldn't miss it." As the story concludes, viewers are left with a powerful message about the importance of courage, resilience, and the impact one person can make in the lives of others. If you were inspired by this story, let us know in the comments below. What would you have done in Karen's place? Have you ever witnessed someone standing up for what's right against all odds? Share your thoughts. We'd love to hear them. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another incredible story. Together, we can shine a light on the power of doing what's right. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.